and nobody's going to buy the truck because it just had a $20,000 price increase.
Right. Kelley Blue Book will put the number up. They say the average vehicle will go up by about $3,000. Does it sound right to you?
No, it will not. We don't have the broad stroke. We don't have the linear, the tight strokes. But to me, it's a 25% tariff. So that affects our parts that come from over these countries, and a whole bunch of our cars.
And you've been basing your business model on free trade, basically. This is what the American Automakers Policy Council says, Maria, in response to this. They say our American automakers invested billions in the U.S. to meet the requirements of the current free trade agreement. They shouldn't have their competitiveness undermined by tariffs that'll raise the cost of building vehicles in the U.S. and stymie investment in the American workforce while competitors from the outside of North America benefit. The German, there's no tariff on the German cars coming in now.
No, they're
Japanese.
They're going to be okay. But think about it. We built our business around that. The OEMs built their business around that, and now it changes on a dime. And we can't build a $4 billion plant overnight in the United States. So I think building in the United States is great. I think enhancing the participation from the other countries on the other things, but this is pretty radical.
All right, so there is a Fox News segment with a Dodge dealer talking about how the price of his trucks are going to go up from $80,000 to $100,000. This is after news that Trump plans to impose 25% tariffs on auto imports. Who's it going to hit hardest? Our strongest allies, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. The president is quite literally disrupting the most successful free trade agreements in world history, particularly that with the United States and Canada. So now Canada, the European Union, and Mexico are discussing new trade partnerships with different countries in Asia and Latin America. And Trump is now freaking out on Truth Social. Here's what he had to say. Quote, if the European Union works with Canada in order to do economic harm to the USA, large-scale tariffs, far larger than currently planned, will be placed on them both in order to protect the best friend that each of these two countries has ever had, end quote. Now, Republicans in Congress today, I'm going to show you this clip in just a few moments, are now calling to rein in the power of the presidency to impose these tariffs on our allies and other countries. Why? Look at this screen grab from Fox News today. The Dow Jones is down 2.17% this year. The S&P 500 down 4.5% this year. The NASDAQ down a staggering 8.47% this year. Now, Trump in his first term constantly talked about how the stock market is the greatest measure of the economy. Now he's telling us that we need some short-term pain in order to get the American economy back on its feet. Something that's remarkable, we were supposed to have multiple interest rate cuts this year. That is now off the table. Here's what White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had to say about these tariffs. I want to play this clip and then after show you what the Atlanta Fed is now saying about these tariffs and rate cuts. Play the clip.
The president will continue to effectively utilize tariffs while, again, driving down the cost of living in this country. Both things can happen at the same time.
Okay, so there you have the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying that it is possible for both these tariffs and costs of living to go down, despite what everyone knows to be true is that these tariffs are going to raise prices and worsen inflation. And now here's bad news from the Atlanta Fed from just a day ago. Here's what he has to say, quote, Atlanta Federal Reserve President Raphael Bostic said he anticipates slower progress on inflation in coming months, and as a result now sees the Fed cutting its benchmark interest rate only 0.25 percentage point by the end of this year. With less progress on inflation and businesses expected to add cost of coming tariffs to their prices, quote, the appropriate path for policy is also going to be pushed back, Bostic said in an interview this morning. Bostic had previously expected the Fed would cut rates twice this year, a view his colleagues largely maintained at their meeting last week when the median policy maker projections saw 2.25 point interest rate cuts in 2025. But several officials moved their outlook higher, even though the median did not change. Bostic said he was reacting to anticipated slower progress on inflation and to the widespread sense he is getting from business contacts that they plan to pass along coming import taxes to consumers. So there you have the Atlanta Fed, the nonpartisan Federal Reserve of Atlanta, who just last month projected that we're now going to have negative growth, something that hasn't happened for over a decade in the United States as a result of these tariffs, saying that these tariffs are going to be passed on to consumers, that inflation is going to be worse than expected. So we're not going to get the interest rate cuts that we thought we were going to have, which tend to send the stock market up. People have more money to play around with. Banks can lend at a lower interest rate. So people are taking out more loans. We're now approaching a stagflation environment where we're going to get a contraction in growth and a worsening of inflation. This inflation that Trump always said was Biden's fault, despite the fact that Trump spent trillions of dollars during his first term to kick off that inflation. Now, here is what Republican Rep Don Bacon had to say on CNN today about reining the president's authority in to impose these tariffs on other countries. Play the clip.
To the United States, but Fords and Chevys made in the United States, all those prices are going to skyrocket. Now, could Republicans in Congress specifically be doing more to push the president to try to de-escalate his trade war? What leverage do you have?
Well, in Article 1 in the Constitution, really tariffs should be a congressional initiated action. So this should come from Congress. However, I think we made a mistake. In the past, we passed legislation that gave the president some temporary tariff authorities. And I think we should look back and maybe restore the power back to Congress and take away the authorizations that we've allowed the presidents, not just President Trump, but President Biden and President Obama before him. This power should reside in the House and the Senate. And we have the power of the purse. And so I think we should restore these authorities back to the House.
Well, that's an interesting proposal. Let's see if that happens.
So there you have it. The president of the United States, who's constantly talking about the stock market as the measure of the economy, tanking the stock market in his first 100 days as president, ripping up some of the most successful trade deals we've ever had, and that any country has ever had, particularly, again, the United States and Canada, one of the most successful free trade agreements in world history. And now you have some Republicans starting to say, you know what? We actually don't want this. We don't want the president to have the power to do this. Why? Because they're going back to their districts. And as we've shown you on our network many times, people are furious. There is a tide turning in this country. We saw a Pennsylvania state Senate seat just last week that was 15 points for Trump. It's now gone Democrat. We're seeing the same thing in deep red Florida districts, that these districts that are going heavily for Trump are now flipping. Could the economy tanking and prices continuing to go up despite him promising everything to go down be part of that? I think so. With Really American Media, I'm Justin Horwitz. Be sure to like, subscribe, set notifications, help us get to 500,000 subscribers. We're going to keep you up to date on all the latest madness and everything going on with the Trump regime. Thank you.